You carried your loyalty like a blade, sharp, unyielding, the kind that cuts deeper than bone. But instead of a prize, instead of a brotherhood's embrace, you found cold nothingness. You thought being loyal was a shield, a promise of standing first in line. But it was the weight of invisibility, of walking through a storm with no one even noticing the thunder you held. You gave everything, bled commitment. And what did she give you back? Silence. Distance. Something else entirely. Something you never saw coming. You told yourself loyalty was currency, but the harsh market of real life doesn't trade in feels or sworn oaths. It trades in presence, in choosing you over the pack. And when that choice never comes, the blade you forged just slides past, leaving a wound no one cleanly stitches. You wander in the wasteland of almost and not quite, asking if maybe your standard for love was just naive hope disguised as strength. You thought if you stood tall and stayed steady, you'd be enough. If you didn't flinch, didn't waver, you'd be the man who was picked. But loyalty, cold as steel, cuts its own path, and sometimes that path leads straight into the void. This is the cruel truth. Being loyal doesn't mean you get to stay. It doesn't mean you're the chosen one. Sometimes you're just the background noise, the forgotten warrior who stood steadfast while the world decided to look elsewhere. The damnation of mistaken belief is the deepest kind of betrayal. You watched someone you thought would fight with you walk away without a glance. You heard the silence where a bond should have lived. You cradled your loyalty like a weapon, only to find that it's not always enough to carve a place in someone's life. It's a bitter lesson, but a necessary one. To survive this, you have to drop the fantasy that your loyalty equals your worth. You're not a promise kept. You're a man who knows how to bear the heavy weight of being overlooked and still stand strong. The wolves on the outside, they don't see your scars. They don't know the nights you stayed quiet, waiting for a word, a sign, a choice that never came. But you know. And that knowledge, steel-tempered in silence, is where you begin to build the life that no one can quietly take away. Loyalty isn't enough. Choosing yourself over and over. Now that's the fight worth winning. You gave everything you had, your time, your heart, your loyalty, like a soldier standing watch in the dark. And still, you faded into the background like a shadow no one chases. No, why does being open, raw, and honest force you into invisibility? You were told to share your feelings, to show up with vulnerability like a badge of honor, but what you got was silence that slices deeper than any insult. Loyalty wasn't supposed to make you forgettable. You carried your weight quietly, relentless as steel. Yet did anyone really notice? Did being the dependable anchor mean you got no cheers, only more expectation to carry on? The world demands you break down walls, promises you respect. Yet when you do, you're ghosted, left alone in the ruins of whatever you built. Why does standing firm in your truth feel like carrying a lead weight that drags you underwater? You wonder, is loving deeply a flaw, a mistake nobody warns you about until you're gasping for air in the wreckage of discarded promises? The good man, consistent in effort and heart, often walks a lonely road. The question isn't just why you were left behind. It's why that good man felt so unseen. You chased understanding, yet all you found was silence echoing back like a taunt. Was being good the fault when others wrapped themselves in ego, loud and untouchable? Loyalty hasn't made you visible, no, not yet. But maybe it's not about being seen by those who won't look. Maybe the real power lives in redefining what loyalty means when the world refuses to honor it. Being present doesn't guarantee recognition. It doesn't buy respect or applause. The quiet discipline, the unshakable presence beneath the noise, is your own kingdom to claim, not theirs. The weight you carry, the wounds you hide, these aren't chains but the forging fires. You are not invisible because you are weak. You are invisible because you have yet to decide who you serve. And when you stop serving the applause and start answering to your own code, that silence will shape into the sound of your own authority. You weren't broken by betrayal. You were forged through it. Think about the storm-tested oak. It doesn't crumble under the weight of the winds. It bends, it sways, and it deepens its roots in the earth until it stands unshakable. That's what Stoicism teaches you. Your pain isn't a prison. It's the smithy where your spirit sharpens. The fire of loss, rejection, disrespect. These are the whetstones against your resolve. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That's not just an ancient proverb. It's your guide out of the chaos you're trapped in. When your mind is clear, the world's noise becomes background static. You see the real shape of your pain, not as a crushing weight, but as a signal, a teacher. I had a brother once, a man who chased after those who never gave him a second thought. He wore himself thin, running ragged, desperate for approval that wasn't ever coming. One day, he stopped. He pulled back like a wolf retreating from a battle it can't win. He traded that exhausting hunt for something quieter but far more lethal, a stoic mindset. He planted his feet, rooted his intentions in self-control and purpose, and watched the storms pass. He wasn't untouched, but he was unbreakable. That is the path you're being called to walk. Not because pain has a way of turning you into a martyr, but because through it, you become a warrior tempered by silence and distance. You learn to welcome the loneliness of your fight because alone you're not weak. You're being sharpened into steel. Most men fight to disappear their wounds, hide their cracks. You'll learn to wear yours like armor, not to boast, but to remind yourself where you came from. Those scars? They aren't marks of failure. They are the rifts that play your strength into the quiet spaces. Transparency and resilience, that's the paradox. You stand naked in your truth, without excuses, without pleading, because you know every wound carried its lesson. The world may see your life as chaos, like a storm roaring to drown your voice. But the stoic warrior, the one who doesn't run from pain but uses it, he sees lightning striking the same tree where others see only destruction. In that silence, in that distance, you discover your battlefield is not outside, but deep inside. You emerge not unscathed but resolute, not weakened but clear. And when you do, the only thing left to say is this: you walked through hell and never raised your voice. You can't control everything. That truth haunts every man who's fallen short, who's felt the sting of rejection or the dull ache of things lost. But detachment is not surrender. It's the blade that cuts through the fog of expectation. When you release the desperate need to manipulate every outcome, you break the chains that weigh down your spirit. Detachment isn't turning your back. It's sharpening clarity in the heat of the moment. Without the burden of constant worry, your steps no longer stagger, they land with deliberate force. You move through the chaos fluidly, a wolf navigating the storm, always aligned with the path you've chosen, never distracted by the noise of what might be. Emotional control is where real strength lives. It's the quiet calm that fills the chest while the storm rages outside. You know that your reactions can ignite fires that burn everything down, but your response, the way you wield your emotions, is the steel that can steady the entire battlefield. You don't exile anger, fear, or frustration. You don't hide or shove them deep. You master them. You let them refine you. Strength like this isn't loud or brash. It's subtle and unshakable. It's the kind of power that holds steady even as the world shifts like sand beneath your feet. Your mission is your compass. This isn't just a vague idea of purpose, it's an ironclad commitment that guides every move like a North Star piercing through the darkest night. The world will, without mercy, attempt to pull you into distraction, into pointless whims and fleeting pleasures. But you don't flinch. You put mission first, always. When every choice comes, you weigh it against the cause that defines you. Impulse is a false leader. Discipline and clarity are your true allies. Growth is war without end. It's exhausting, quiet, and often invisible. You may never see the roots pushing deep beneath the surface, but that underground work is where your true strength is born. Like the oak that stands tall through each season, you build greatness not with grand gestures, but with relentless patience and persistence. Growth is often silent, something only you witness. Solitude is your forge. In the stillness where no one watches and no one demands, you hear the truest voice there is, your own. Solitude is not loneliness. It's the space where you unearth the core of who you are. In that silence, you become fortified, no longer a reflection of others' noise or shadows. You lead by your own light, tethered to no one but the truth that lives quietly inside your chest. You walk through hell, unbowed. You don't explain. You elevate. You've marched through the gauntlet and come out forged, not scarred. The weight of rejection tried to crush you, tried to bend you into what others wanted. But you refused. Every cut, every shadow was a week in the warrior's forge, burning away the softness, the doubt, until only steel remained. You don't carry those old wounds like a badge of victimhood, but as the proof of your rebirth, clean and unyielding. Now you lead, but not with noise or desperate display. The loud men have long since fallen behind. It's the quiet among you who hold the iron reins, who see your own strength because you've learned to respect the silence inside. This silence isn't emptiness. It's a calm battlefield where your clarity takes shape, where your will is sharpened sharper than any blade. I lead in silence, you say to yourself quietly, and the words land heavy and true with no need to explain. This is your era. It's not written by the failures or the ghosts that chased you. They're distant echoes fading in the cold air of your new beginning. Instead, it's marked by the clarity you found in the firestorm, forged by the brutal clarity of choosing who you become, not being dragged along by what fate threw at you. You shed the expectations that never fit, like a wolf losing old chains, and took on the mantle of your own truth. To control yourself is to command your world. It's cold, precise, and absolute. You don't move forward weighed down by loss. You advance with a fire in your gut that knows loss is only the ground cleared for new conquest. You have all you need inside: steel will, stillness, a hunger for what's next. And the road before you is yours alone to claim and own without apology. This is not the end of the fight, but the calm after the storm, the still point where a man finally sees the horizon clear and knows what he must do. I lead in silence,